can't.
Good morning and welcome to this edition of the Get Untethered Hangout on Air. I am Stacey Harmon and I'm here with my co-author of Untethered with Evernote, Kristi Willis. Good morning, Kristi.
Good morning, Stacey.
We are really excited about today's topic. We're going to be talking about going all in, upgrading to Evernote Business. As you probably are aware, if you're watching this, Evernote has 3 tiers of service, and this is their business grade that we're going to be talking about. So the topic of this isn't necessarily user training. We assume you know a lot about Evernote if you're considering Evernote Business. You may or may not, but you're probably interested in this because you understand that Evernote can be good for your business. And we're going to give you some of the background and parts and pieces that you need in order to successfully understand how to organize Evernote Business and get your users kind of up and running. So Kristi and I are both Evernote ambassadors as well as Evernote Business certified consultants. So this is really what an Evernote Business certified consultant is a designated expert in the Evernote Business tier of service. And quite honestly, a big part of my job is helping businesses to deploy Evernote Business successfully. And Kristi, do you want to talk a little bit about what role that plays for you in your work?
Yeah, I work with a number of clients, large and small. Right now, I'm on a long-term deployment with Whole Foods, and am working with their social media and customer service team. Evernote Business has been a really great way for us to be able to collaborate and coordinate across time zones and between teams, which has been a really great thing to see in action as they're working with so many other tools. So.
Yeah. Okay. And so we've got experience with Evernote Business at even like a one-person level all the way up to kind of a corporate deployment. So hopefully we'll give you a lot of tips that will appeal to a lot of different situations. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and show you some of my slides. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Going all in, upgrading to Evernote Business. So hopefully you can see that at this point. Kristi, could you just confirm that for me?
Yes.
You are seeing it. Okay, good. Okay, so let's begin. This is our Twitter handle. So Twitter's a great way to reach both Kristi and I. And if you have questions, feel free to tweet at us. We love to engage with people who love Evernote on Twitter. And we are also, in addition to our ambassador and EBCC or Evernote Business Certified Consultant roles, we're co-authors of Untethered with Evernote, which is available at GetUntethered.com in a variety of formats. It's also one of only 3 books on Evernote available at the Evernote market. You can get it there in EPUB form. It has a different cover, but same great content. So please feel free to check that out. And let me just tell you how this is going to kind of work. I'll back up a slide. Kristi's going to kind of introduce you to why you would consider, why Evernote Business, answer that big question. And she's going to then discuss with you several of the features that are different between Evernote Premium and Evernote Business, because we're talking about kind of upgrading. And then I'm going to, after she sets the stage and gives you guys some of the parameters that you need to know, I'm going to give you some of the tips that I have for actually deploying Evernote in businesses, but when you start basically from scratch, when you don't have a lot of users who are really already ingrained in Evernote and using it in the organization. So I tend to work with a lot of clients where the principal is an Evernote user. They want to now take it to the business level. They're seasoned, but their team is maybe newer to Evernote, and we're doing a fresh install. So I'm going to kind of take that perspective. Pretty much all those things are going to apply to what Kristi's then going to talk to you about, but she's going to add some additional details about, some considerations when you're working with a team that has already got existing systems, may have several Evernote users. The complexity kind of goes up a notch. We both have seen some of those challenges, and so we tried to articulate some of the strategies for best dealing and planning for a successful deployment with that. So Kristi's going to kind of take the lead on describing some of that at the end. And then we've got a couple special offers for you today, so please stick around till the end. We've got some help for you if this is a topic that you'd like some assistance in, as well as a great spring offer on the book. So with that, Kristi, I'm going to let you kind of answer why should we be using Evernote Business?
Okay, well, let me take it away. I'm going to share my screen here. And great. So why Evernote Business? You know, I was thrilled when Evernote came out with the business product because premium is fabulous, but if you have a bunch of people in a business using Evernote and somebody leaves the business, you could lose the notes, and particularly if that departure is not one that everybody was in agreement with. And so Evernote Business gives you that solution where the business notes live with the company. I have administrative control over who has access to those notes, when they have access. So if they depart, I can remove them from the account and not worry about the notes going away. I can invite people as they join the team. But the business notes live with the business, and that makes a huge difference. So it gives us that peace of mind that all of these things that are being created stay with us. Users can't delete data. If something is deleted from a notebook, it's going to go in the trash, and then only the admins can delete that trash. And then, as I mentioned, when the employee leaves, the notes stay. We also have increased upload limits. So if you are bumping up against your 4 gig, which we'll look at here in just a minute, you get an increased upload limit. And for those employees who are using Evernote in their personal lives, having Evernote's Business gives them one workspace for everything. So I love it because I can have that personal thought of, oh, I need to create this item, and I can put that in Evernote in my personal notebooks, and I can quickly just switch back to my business world without ever having to leave that environment. So it really gives people that one workspace that they need without having to jump back and forth between 2 tools, which is a fantastic thing for those of us who love Evernote at home as well. So here are some of the numbers. In this Hangout, we are only talking about the difference between premium and business. If you're a free user, the jump is even bigger, and there is a great note in Evernote support about the different size limits that are available at each of them. But we're focusing on people who are premium. You've already recognized that you want more storage, more ability, more sharing ability. And so we're just going to compare that in business. You can see that there is a big difference. So in a premium account, I have 100,000 notes, whereas in a business account, I can have up to 500,000 notes for the company. Those are huge numbers, even for me putting everything in Evernote. I think I only have 12,000 notes. Stacey, how many notes do you have now?
I'm up to 14,000.
Wow, so she's ahead of me. But those limits are really great as far as the increases. The note storage also goes up, so I still get my 4 gigabyte limit for my personal notes, plus 2 gigabytes per seat in business. So if you have 10 business users, you're going to have another 20 gigabytes per month in your business notebooks as well. If you are a notebook person and you love to create lots of notebooks, I know this was a big win for Stacey. There's a 250 notebook limit for premium, but you can have 10,000 company notebooks. So I know Stacey was happy to have the extra notebooks there. This is the big one for me, admin control. You have no control over who people are sharing things with from their premium accounts. But with Evernote Business, you invite people notebooks. You can still share with people outside the company, but you also can remove those people. So you have admin control over who has access to that data, which is great. And in sharing, in premium, notebooks can be shared individually with Evernote users, but they can also be published publicly. And this is a big thing for a lot of companies, is they do not want any chance that their confidential information could be shared publicly. And so by going to business, those business notebooks cannot be shared publicly. They can't be published publicly. Again, you can still invite people outside of the company. I do this all the time in my business notebooks. I invite my clients to a notebook. Stacey does that as well. But again, there's no public publishing of those business notebooks. The final difference is the cost. Premium is $45 per year per user. Business is $10 per month per user. But I think what you gain out of the admin control, the number of notes, and the other benefits, it's definitely worth the investment. Stacey, did you have any other thoughts to add about kind of the differences between premium and business?
You covered it very well.
Okay, great. So what does business look like? So you've worked with Evernote Premium or Evernote Free Edition. When you join Evernote Business, you get a whole new place to work from. So when I joined Evernote Business, in addition to my notebook list, which I've removed just for the purpose of screenshotting here, I also now have at the bottom a place to access my business store. So my individual company is called KW Solutions Group. And so when I go and click on that, I start to see my business layout. And initially where I land is the people in my business. And again, I'm a small shop. It's me and Lillian, my production manager. But if you had a number of employees, you would see them there in that list. And you can see in that kind of dashboard view how many notebooks there are, how many people have joined, etc. I can switch, oops, sorry. Crazy mouse control. All right. I can also see here my business notebooks. I can start to see a list of those notebooks, how many notes are in each, and how many people have joined them. So typically I'm publishing things and Lillian is joining. So we typically only have one or two. Sometimes we'll have a couple of people in there. But you can see how many notes are in each, and you can start to see the activity that has happened around those, which is really helpful. So you can see who created it. If you're in a company situation where you have multiple admins, you'll be able to tell who created the notebook. And then if you're an individual user, you can leave the notebook from here. So if you no longer, maybe you switch teams in the company, you no longer need access to a notebook, you can leave it. So this is a dashboard that from within the Evernote client, any business user is going to be able to see. They can look for people or look for business notebooks from the Evernote desktop client, which is really great. I can also invite coworkers to collaborate. So anyone on the team can invite coworkers, but admins get approval. So for example, with the Whole Foods team that I'm working with, they have been adding people to the customer service team. So the customer service team leader has been requesting that new people be added. So she can invite anyone, and then as an admin, I get a notice that there are people who need approval, that somebody's been invited to the business. And so that's nice because you as the admin don't have to track down every new hire. You can have the team leads be in charge of that, which is terrific. When I want to go in and administer the Evernote Business Store or users, I can do that through the admin console, which is a terrific tool. The way that you get there, it is part of the web client. So you can either from your desktop app go to help and go to admin console, or you can log into the web client. You can see this on the right and choose admin console at the bottom. And this is where I can manage my users, my notebooks, and my billing. So here again, I'm just using my personal out of client privilege, using my personal store to show the example. So it's a small number of users, but you get an idea for how it's laid out. From here, again, I can invite users. I can get that dashboard view of how much of our store are we using and what are my total users involved in the notebooks. And then I can go into the individual parts of the admin console and work more with what I need to do for my team. So you have two setups as adding users. One is that you can add any user with that domain. So at kwsolutionsgroup.com, and any user with that domain would be able to automatically join my company. So they don't have to request approval. It would just be automatic. You can imagine that we did not set up this for the small 15-person team that I'm working with at Whole Foods, because there are 85,000 employees at Whole Foods. So that would have been a bit excessive for that team's budget. But instead, what we've chosen to do is add team members individually. And again, the team leads can do that, or as an admin, I can go in and do that and invite those users to join. You also can manage your users from here. So again, small list for just Lillian and me, but you can go in and determine their role. We're a small group, so I just have one admin, but for that team at Whole Foods, I actually set up 3 admins so that if one person is unavailable, one of the other admins could go in and administer the users or notebooks as needed. So making sure that you have some redundancy, and if one admin leaves, the other admin can remove them is important. You also can determine the status, and you can set up two-step verification so that it requires a second step to be able to log in. So if you have highly sensitive data, this would be really important. The team at Whole Foods that I'm working with is not working with a lot of sensitive data, so we're okay with single-step verification. But if I was working with a legal or financial team where there are, or an HR team, where there might be a great deal of sensitive information, I would definitely set up that two-step verification. Oh, just one other little point there. If there are users who have requested access, but they haven't been signed off on, they will appear up here in this top piece, and then you can just choose to accept them or not. I can also administer the business notebooks from here, so I can go in and determine who they're shared with and how many members there are. So for example, you can see on that top notebook, we're working on a cookbook right now. There are 3 members, even though typically it's just Lillian and me, because our photographer is part of that notebook. And so you can see exactly how many members there are, etc., and who that is shared with. And it doesn't have to be shared with the business. There are actually a couple of notebooks that are just for me. They are financial or administrative things that Lillian doesn't need access to. And so they are just for me. So you can always kind of tell the difference here in that business notebook screen. And it is important when you create a business notebook, it is hidden from everybody else until it is shared with the business. And so Stacey's going to talk a little bit more about that, but you do want to make sure that for notebooks that you want other people to be able to join, that you have made them available to the business. And so the new process is you create the notebook and then you come into the admin console to be able to share that out. But I'm not going to steal Stacey's thunder. You can also administer the business tags from here and clean tags up, be able to tell how many notes are assigned to tags, etc. So any tags that everybody would need to be able to use, you can go in and be able to check those and administer them from here. And then finally, you can administer the trash from here. And so if you, when people delete things, they're going to go into the trash. They're going to stay in the trash until you clear it out. You can tell I'm not a very good trash emptier. And so I can go in and individually delete notes or empty the trash as a whole. But you can tell who deleted it and be able to restore it to its proper place if needed. So that is what the Evernote Business Admin Console looks like. Again, it's a web-based tool, and you can get to it through the desktop through choosing Help, Admin Console, or logging into the web client. Stacey captured this great graphic for us because from a day-to-day usage standpoint, when you have business, it does separate out your business and your personal notes when you're in the different clients. And so on the Mac, those are listed alphabetically. And on the PC, they are separated into personal and business notebooks. This is also how they are separated on the mobile apps. So the personal and business notebooks are separate, as well as I believe the web app is set up that way. And so it can be, if you use multiple clients, it can be a little confusing the first time you go to look for something and you're like, oh wait, I'm in business notebooks, not personal notebooks. And so you just have to kind of train yourself if you are working with the PC or one of the mobile apps to orient first, is it in personal or business? Just like you would have 2 file cabinets in real life, and then go and look for the notebook. Again, in the Mac notebook list, they're just going to be listed in order alphabetically, but in the other clients, they are separated between personal, business, and then listed alphabetically. Stacey, do you have any other kind of thoughts or comments about that?
I'll talk a little bit more about this when I get to my section, but from a user education perspective, this is a really important point right here, is that depending on if they're on a Mac or a PC, the order with which their notebooks appear in their client will be different. So, you know, Kristi basically just said that, but I find that it's something that newer users, as you start to deploy this to your business, really need to understand. And it's just a view thing. The data is the same, but it can impact naming conventions, which is something that we're gonna discuss in a few minutes.
And I will say I panicked a little bit the first time I went to find something on my mobile app, and because I use my iPad a lot, and I went to find a notebook and it wasn't in the list, and I had to take a step back and take a breath and was like, oh, right, because I'm in the personal notebook list and I need to be in the business notebook list. But that first time you go to do it, if you're not used to it, it's a little confusing, and so you just have to kind of stop and breathe and orient yourself. It's a little bit of a change.
Yeah, it's definitely a step up that you want to consider when you're doing Evernote Business deployment your users, and you need to have a comprehension of the fact that there's really a personal side and a business side to the account. And once users grasp that, they see the power in it, and it becomes very functional. But it is something that we often have to train to.
Yes, yeah, it takes you a second to get the change. All right, do we have any questions in the Hangout so far about kind of how the Evernote Business is set up, or where you make the changes for Evernote Business, what those look like?
So I forgot to mention that we have a Q&A pod on the side. So if you do have questions, you can go ahead and actually be typing those in. We're happy to answer them as we go along. You can also tweet us questions if you're watching this after the fact. We'll be happy to address them. I don't see any questions right now, but like I said, if as we go through this, you want to post those, we'll be happy to address them. If you don't have anything else to add, Kristi, I'll be happy to go into my section.
Nope, you take it away, Stacey, and show us your example of setting people up.
Okay, so now those are the foundations, and you really have to kind of just understand those as the person who's bringing Evernote into your organization. I do want to bring up one point. You specified the importance of having 2 admins. Yes. If you have a larger organization, it's absolutely critical to decide who are going to be your admins. I had a horror story with a client who had his assistant be the only admin in his Evernote Business account. And when she not pleasantly left the organization, she took all the rights with her. He didn't have access to his account. And it's not simple, logically so, to reclaim access to that if you don't have admin privileges. Okay, so you know, things came to a screeching halt for him because it was a simple error of not having 2 admins designated. So it's an important role. You want to think through it, and especially if you're a larger organization, you want to be sure that you as the principal of the organization have admin access, even if you're really not going to be doing anything in a day-to-day basis and you're going to be delegating the administration to someone else. So that would be my word of caution as you go towards Evernote Business. So now I'm going to take some time and I'm going to go through some of my best, my lessons and process for starting fresh with Evernote Business in your organization. So the scenario here is that you probably are a current user, or you think that Evernote Business is going to be the way that you want to go because of the data ownership and the administrative control. And we're starting kind of with a fresh, clean install of Evernote Business into a group. So this is kind of the process that I go through with clients. I think there's really 4 big phases to it. And we don't have the time to necessarily get into all of these here. I just want to conceptually lay out what's going to make for the most successful deployment for you. And I think they fall into 4 discrete categories. You really need to have clarity on your workflow that exists, and design a workflow that includes Evernote. So you want to have clarification about that. You also are going to need to set up the software. Evernote Business needs to be configured as a business account. You need to define your admins. You need to invite users, several things Kristi went through. You also need to set up the users and their devices and make sure that the settings are configured properly to allow for maximum use of Evernote and maximum learning of Evernote, because there's a learning curve for your users. And then you want to have the notebooks established so that people have something to join when they kind of begin and see the collaborative benefits. There's also going to be admin and user training. A big part of the deployments that I do is making sure that the administrators understand what Kristi oriented people to and more, as well as your users which range from, very green, so to speak, with Evernote, all the way up to very seasoned. So you have a lot of nuances, as we have covered now in like the last 9 months. There's a lot to talk about and learn with Evernote. We do these hangouts once a month with a new, very specific topic. And then process training too. As you deploy your Evernote processes, you need to make sure that your team is adhering to those. And that leads into the fourth phase, which is really process documentation and management. You want to be sure that you know what your processes are, that they're documented and accessible by the team. And that as you work with things, this is again the wonder of Evernote, is it's flexible. It allows you to adapt as your processes evolve. So that you're making adjustments and those things are getting pushed out to your users, and that as the platform evolves, then the user training about new features is expanded as well. And you have new people that come and go as well, and you have to have a system for kind of bringing those people up to speed. So, it can be a lot. Here's the thing. If you are a small shop, if you're a 1 or 2 person business, all of this stuff can happen pretty quickly. And it can happen kind of concurrently, and it doesn't have to be complex. When you get up into a 10 or 20 or a 50 person deployment, these types of things become far more important to have solidified and understood, so that you are creating a solution that's scalable and will work for all of your users. So the amount of time that you take to, and the formality with which you go through these things can vary greatly depending on the size of your organization, as well as the skill set of the users that are involved, and the handle that you have on your personal existing processes. If it's really well established versus if it's something that you're evolving on the fly, that's going to impact how long it takes to do all this. So with the rest of my time, I'm just going to give you a couple of tips within each of these categories that I've kind of learned through and consult with people on, so that you can get a feel for some things to consider as you go through it. So let's talk about best practices in category 1, workflow clarity and design. Again, this is going to be about things such as, where should my data live? There's no right or wrong if it all should be in Evernote. Some companies it should, some companies it should be split. It really is going to vary on your situation. You want to be considering who needs access to what, and what kinds of sharing privileges and rights people need. And you also want to consider naming conventions. So all of these things are going to impact your design and your workflow deployment. So here's an example. A lot of people will have data already on a server, and simply looking at that and deciding what data should be in Evernote is a best practice. Again, not everything should go in there, and maybe decide what initially are we going to put in there? Where are we going to start? What's going to stay on the server? What's going to be moved into Evernote? And take screenshots and highlight that kind of thing. This is another screenshot explaining kind of, it's not even really about putting your hands into Evernote yet. This is about stepping back and saying, what are my current processes? This is something I go through on the more robust deployments that I do with Evernote Business with my clients, is let's document your current workflow process, what softwares, who's involved in it. This type of clarity helps us understand where we can best insert Evernote and digitization into the process. And we can make it efficient and make sure that we are meeting the end needs. So you can see an example here on the left of kind of a workflow map that documents a process for one of my clients. And we are able to then, as a team, effectively decide where Evernote should be inserted into that process and what role it will play. You can also go more simple. So that's an example on the left of a client where we're doing workflow design kind of from the ground up and clarifying their processes and then using Evernote to map that. There's other examples. You might have a really solidified process already. This is a client on the right that I worked with, a real estate, and they already had a very defined structure of how they organize their data, and we were able to simply replicate that in Evernote with some adaptations for what the software allows. So you can go very simple, you can go very detailed. These are just some ideas to help you understand kind of where to start and what's going to help impact the workflow that you deploy. The other best practice is both Kristi and I are huge on discussing and deciding on naming conventions. And it becomes even more important when you get into the business tier of the software. And this is because of this business home that Kristi oriented you to and the ability to join notebooks. When you have naming conventions, it provides a logical grouping that makes sense to your users once notebooks are sorted alphabetically. And it provides structure to these shared workspaces that Evernote Business provides. So on the left, the problem is you have to decide, or the challenge is not the problem. The challenge is you need to decide what is that naming convention for your business. So on the left, you have an example from a real estate client where we developed a naming convention because each notebook was going to be around a particular transaction or client, okay? So it's sorted by street address, which is their most unique identifying factor, and we combine it with a client name. On the right, we have a different type of client, not real estate, that is dealing with marketing materials, literature pieces, and we developed some naming conventions to help group those kinds of things in the notebook title and make sense when users go to join those notebooks. So you have to understand what the unit you're tracking in your business is, and apply that to your notebooks and the naming convention. And there's a little bit of an art to that, but it's something to think through. Kristi, you got something to add?
Yeah, I just would say that, and that's really important. We've mentioned this before in our organizing podcast, or hangouts, but stacks are personal. And so creating a stack doesn't translate to other users. And so that naming convention becomes really important for people to be able to hone in on the grouping. And then they can create a stack if they want to organize their notebooks in a certain way. But you can't create a stack for everybody. Everybody can't have the same shelf. And so those naming conventions create kind of that grouping in the full notebook store so people then can group them the way they want to in their personal view.
Absolutely. Okay, and there'll be a little bit more to that in the user training section that we discussed, but she's absolutely right. It's really, really important to give a lot of thought to the notebook naming convention at the beginning. Okay, the next section is software setup. So best practices for setting up the software. In general, this is talking about what Kristi oriented you to at the beginning, and getting your business home notebooks established. Here's a couple of more detailed tips that I like to advise people on. The first is to really make sure that if your users that you're inviting to the system are an existing Evernote account holder, they have a personal or a premium account, that when they sign up for business, they'll get an email. They want to use an existing account here. They don't want to sign up for a second Evernote account. Now, they certainly can, but they're going to have a much more pleasant experience if they merge their two accounts, which in essence is only displaying their personal and their business account in the same interface. They need to be trained that their personal notes are still their personal notes, and should they ever move on from the organization, they'll keep their personal notes. The business notes will stay with the business, but Evernote is so powerful in the fact that you can view both of these in one interface, and that really makes Evernote a very unique and powerful tool. So coach people when you're setting up Evernote that if they have an existing Evernote account to log in, and then they'll be able to add their business email to that so that they can have all of their notes in one place. The other thing is, I like to advocate that you allocate at least an hour per user that you're bringing to the system to do a general device setup for them. This involves things like installing the desktop client and the mobile client on all of their devices, installing and configuring the web clipper, making sure that Sketch and other companion apps like Scannable are installed, that you've gone through all of the preferences and made sure that the sync, which is really important to have set at the shortest amount of time when you're dealing with a lot of high degree of collaboration, is set properly. These things will really minimize user frustration as they learn Evernote, and it's really, in my experience, has found that about an hour per user to make sure that all of their devices are configured to set up Evernote is a good way to go. And then Kristi and I, this is a little preview, we're going to be doing an entire hour on the preferences that really matter to set up in our next month's hangout. So we'll kind of comb through those and give you guys a lot of tips for how to do that. Do you have anything to add to this one, Kristi?
Yeah, I would just say if you're working with a large company, what I would do is create a deployment team and have one person in charge of a group of users to make sure that that group of users gets everything installed correctly and just give them a checklist. So if you're working a small team, it's easy to do kind of that one-on-one, but with a larger team, I'd just create a deployment team to help get everybody installed.
Absolutely. Okay, the next user thing that I really like to advocate, and this can happen during that deployment phase when you're sitting there at their machine, is again, because you have this personal and business side of your account, I like to make sure that each user has an inbox-personal and an inbox-business. So it's really just a renaming of your default notebook on the personal side, and then creating, or actually, Evernote will create a business notebook for each user and renaming that to inbox-business. And I like to put the period there so that it sorts at the top. We've covered that strategy before. But this creates basically, a wire in basket for all notes for users to have some kind of visual organization structure right off the bat. Both of these places will be by default private or personal to the user. They won't be shared. They're personal workspaces, but they do help users to really get on board with the difference between personal and business and have kind of a separation between those two strategies. And then as you can see here, the interface is going to be slightly different in how that sorts on the PC versus the Mac. So depending on what client you're on, you'll want to train your users about that too. Anything to add here, Kristi?
No, I think that's good.
All right. So best practices for admin and user training. Kristi gave you a good overview of the admin panel, but you want to be sure all your admins understand that. You want to build in training for your Evernote users and then process training as well. And one of the key things that I think you need to consider here is really making sure your users understand business notebook behavior. When they understand the concepts on this slide, everything becomes easier. So be sure to include in the training the understanding of privacy versus ownership. So Kristi's really introduced us to this, but again, a notebook is a personal workspace for the user. A business notebook is, when it's first created, it's not shared and it's not visible to everyone else. However, when they create a business notebook, it's not owned by them. So should they leave the company, the admin has the ability to reassign the notes that are in that notebook or reassign that notebook to another user so that the intellectual property and the business processes that were contained in there retain with the business. On the personal side of Evernote, privacy and ownership are one and the same. So the user, when they create a personal notebook, they have a personal workspace that's not shared with anyone, but they do also own that notebook. So if they leave, the notebook will go with them. And actually the interface is helpful in reiterating that. The terminology, when you go to say delete a notebook, if it's on the personal side, it will say delete. If it's on the business side, it'll say leave, which indicates that you really can't delete it. You can leave it as a user. You can't delete it. The next thing is, as Kristi mentioned, stack organization. Users need to understand that stacks are user specific. So it is a user preference. You can organize notebooks however you like. And when users understand that, it makes things clearer. When admins understand that, it makes things a lot clearer. One of the very common questions I get when I do Evernote business deployments is, how do I make everybody's system look the same? Okay. If you're interested in having notebooks and all organized the same, you need to do a recommended stack organization. Maybe take a screenshot of that and put it as part of your deployment materials. But as your users get savvy with Evernote, they'll understand that they can actually organize their notebooks that the business will define in ways that are going to be most beneficial to their role. So this is a clarification element that you'll really want to enforce. You also want to understand sharing behavior of notebooks. And Kristi and I did a whole webinar on this last month, so I'm not going to go into it. I'm just going to go into one key point. You can reference that webinar. But when they understand the sharing behavior of notebooks, life becomes much easier. A best practice that I like to reinforce with all of my clients is do not rename notebooks after they've been shared. So it doesn't matter if you're sharing with an individual, or I'm also defining sharing as publishing it to the business home. Don't rename a notebook after sharing. Once it's been shared, don't rename it. The reason is because Evernote's behavior is that the notebook rename won't be pushed to the other users that it's been shared to. So this can kind of wreak havoc when you have especially larger deployments if people start renaming notebooks. So this is just a best practice to kind of keep in mind as you're going forward. And then the last element is users. This is a new concept for business users, which is publishing notebooks. So I'm going to take some time to kind of show you some nuances about that and some best strategies that I coach on when we do business deployments. And this is a lot about the business home, which Kristi introduced you to. This is an example of kind of how it looks in my business, which I've got a big bad 3 people on my Evernote business account. And then again, I'm a small shop personally too, but you can see here that there's actually a process that there's 2 sides to notebooks. So let me just clarify here. I'll reset the stage that Kristi introduced earlier. When you're in your what's called business home, which is your new element with business here, you have the opportunity to view people as well as business notebooks. It's a toggle here between people and business notebooks, okay? When you go to the business notebooks, you'll see a list of all of the notebooks that you have access to, that the administrator has published or that other users have published to kind of the business home. Now, there is a process. Any user can go in and join those notebooks. They can proactively join them or leave them anytime they like. And this 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of shows you the path for doing that. And you can see here, when I go to the Harmon Enterprises business home, I go to the business notebooks. That top notebook, it does right to the right of the 3 doesn't have the word join. That means it's a notebook that's available to me, but I haven't actually added it to my account here so that it displays. As opposed to these, which show that I've joined them, that means they're going to show up in my tree structure on the left. So if I want to add a notebook to my account, I can simply join it here by hitting the join notebook. Okay, so users need to understand that. It's a new skill that Evernote Business brings to the table, and well worth your time to train on. There's the flip side of this, which is I'm a user and I want to create a notebook that can be accessed by my team and collaborated on by my team. Now, I find this, so I've kind of developed this strategy with my smaller clients that have maybe 3 to 5 people in the deployment. I call it the create, publish, push strategy. And this is the way to ensure, and I like to train users, that when you are creating a new notebook that's designed to be published to the business home, and that you want the other people in your account to join, you should create, publish, push. And the reason I have this is because, as you can see here, this requires each individual user to go in and proactively join a notebook. So one of the challenges is, if I create a new notebook that I want my assistant to join, I have to go and tell her to go and join it. Or so I think, okay? The reality is it's possible to push a new notebook that you've created to other members of your team, and that's why you need to train them on my create, publish, push strategy. So what this would mean is, the process would be, I'm gonna create a new notebook in my account, a new business notebook in my account. I'm then going to publish it so that the rest of my business has the ability to join it at any time or leave it. And on the PC, the vocabulary would be simply to right-click on here and modify sharing. That'll take you to the publish feature. And on the Mac, you would right-click on it and you choose publish notebook, okay? So that's phase 1. Now it's available for anybody to go in and go through this process and see it. It would show as not joined. But users should take an extra step and do what's called push this notebook to the people that they want to have collaborate in it. And this 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of shows you how you can do that in a larger deployment. So you can go to your business home, you go to the people, you choose the person who you want to push the notebook to, and you then can choose to invite them to notebooks on point 4. What this will do is make sure that the notebook, and you can invite them to multiple notebooks, get pushed into their account so that they can see new notebooks that have been created. They also will receive an email, as you can kind of see on the right side, that says a notebook has been added to their account. Then you have this shared workspace that they didn't have to go in and join. Instead, it just appears. If it no longer becomes relevant to them, they can certainly leave the notebook. But this is a great way to train your users to create, publish, push, create, publish, push when they create new notebooks that should be shared to the business. Kristi, do you have anything to add to that? It's one of the more difficult concepts I have getting ingrained in organizations, but it's also really, really helpful in the ongoing operations and notebook creation. But your thoughts with larger teams, maybe?
Well, if you are the admin, you can also go into the admin console and invite people to the notebook from there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're the admin creating notebooks, you don't have to go to each individual user. You can do that and have them join that way. You also, as we talked about last month, could use work chat to share a notebook out to people. If you need to share that notebook with multiple people, and you don't want to have to go to each individual user through the business dashboard, and then you can still share it out through work chat as well.
Absolutely. Okay, so moving on to the 4th and final best practice phase, process documentation and management. The tip here really is to just do it. It's important to have it down. This is so that you can make sure you have consistency amongst how people are working with your system. And what I suggest is that you simply use an Evernote note to log your Evernote business and process rules. Maybe create a notebook called Evernote rules, Evernote deployment, team processes, something along those lines, and write these things down. Here, what are your process notes? What are the naming conventions for your notebooks? What are the naming conventions for your notes? These kinds of things should be logged. What are the best practices for users when they create notebooks that should be shared? This create, publish, push strategy. These kinds of things really very important in the ongoing viability of your system. And I assume Kristi will expand on the importance of this as teams grow in size, but it's really, really helpful. It does take some time, but it's going to make everything more successful. It also helps users to really clarify and understand why something was put in place and how what they do impacts the overall system. So anything to add to that, Kristi?
No.
Okay. So those are kind of the my 4 general areas. Obviously, there's a lot to that. You can see there's a lot of the art of doing an Evernote deployment comes in the workflow design and deployment and naming conventions and such. But hopefully that gave you a couple of tips to make things a little easier for you as you go forward, and some things to proactively think about as you deploy Evernote Business in your organization from scratch. So now I think what Kristi's going to do is tell us a little bit more about her experience and best practices for when you migrate people who are already using Evernote on a personal basis into kind of a business account, or maybe even a business process as well.
Yeah, so the first several Evernote business deployments I did were for people who maybe one person on the team was using Evernote, but everybody else wasn't. And so really was that example that Stacey just gave of kind of starting from scratch. But the most recent deployment that I've helped with on the direct marketing team at Whole Foods, they were all using Evernote in their business operations, but as premium users. And when I joined in, I talked to the leader of the team about kind of the risk that put us all out, because they were using it quite a bit, and they were in a lot of transition, and so people were moving to other positions in the company, and their notes were going with them. And so we decided that it was really best for the 16-person team to start using Evernote Business so that the notes stayed with the business even if the people moved to different positions in the company. And it's a little bit different when you have existing premium users, because what they've been doing is they have been creating notebooks in their premium personal store and then sharing them with each other, but there's no map of how that works. And so the very first thing that I had to do is figure out who is sharing what with whom. And let me tell you, that was a little bit of a maze. And I tried initially doing this kind of through a survey, but really figured out that I needed to sit down with each person. And so we sat down and went through their notebooks, which were the notebooks that they were using that had Whole Foods notes in them, who had they shared that with, and then I created kind of the map of what was existing in Evernote through those premium accounts and who needed access to it, and be able to flesh that out as our starting point for our notebook structure, and then be able to add to that what other notebooks did we need, what sorts of things were they sharing by email, that really made more sense to move into Evernote. And this team, this direct marketing team, is actually 3 separate teams under one umbrella. And so each of them does things a little bit differently, but also had some similarities. And so we wanted to help kind of even out that structure. But really the kind of the big thing for this was going in and figuring out who had what when, and it just required me to go sit down and do a little interview. But it was really the best way to sort of figure out and unravel that maze. And then the other things that I would mention here that are just a little bit different than when you're starting from scratch is in addition to figuring out that maze of what notebook structure we needed and who needed to share what, was creating a time and a set of processes to move the notes from premium to business. So we needed to get them out of those premium notebooks into the business notebooks. And I taught everybody who was using those notes previously how to do that move, and then we set a deadline so that of when those notes needed to be moved over so that they would be available to everybody in the business. And then it was, oops, and I noticed, hold on, well, we've lost a bullet point here, but that's okay. Helping people integrate and transition to the idea of business versus personal notes. And Stacey talked about this, but it's renaming those inboxes, separate notebook groupings in the PC, mobile, and web. And then the other thing that I did is I created transition workshops. So for I did kind of 2 separate workshops. There were people on the team who had never used Evernote before, and so for them I really did an Evernote 101. This is how you use Evernote. This is what it looks like from the business. And for the people who had been using premium, I did a separate set of workshops really about like, this is what's different now, and how you move around in business and what's going to be different for you. And I also did some level settings. Some of them were using Clipper, some of them weren't. So I made sure that everybody knew how to use the tools that were available to them. And then just one of the big things as you're going through this whole process, really making sure that you have a project manager to shepherd the transition, document the new processes, and train the users is really important. As the EBCC on the team, I was the project manager for this, but even within the 3 individual teams, there's one champion on each of those teams who's helping support the integration of Evernote into the business. And I can't stress that enough. Of course, it's fabulous if you hire an EBCC to help you, but if that's not within your resources or you have an Evernote guru on your team, just making sure that they're really empowered to be that champion and that they're able to identify champions on the sub-teams who can help when they're not there, really make the process work for everybody and help integrate the process. Having a tool is great, but you have to have the processes and workflows to back it up. And because tools don't solve problems, it's using the tool in the right way in the day-to-day practice of the business that solves the challenge. So having the champions for that is going to be really, really important. Anything that you would add to that, Stacey?
No, that's exactly right. Having that champion, often it's the person that decided to bring Evernote to the business, but if that's you and you're the principal and you have a lot of other tasks, bringing in a consultant to help you. It doesn't have to be a long-term proposition. It can be a deployment issue, and then you've got internal people who are continually onboarding new users, because one of the benefits of Evernote is it really is user-friendly to kind of get new users on board. And when that system's set up properly, it really can self-run with new people as you kind of come through. So taking the time up front to work with somebody, whether it's internal or external, that understands things, can make the world of difference moving forward and make this a very affordable and effective software for you and your business.
Yeah,
so
agreed.
Okay, so let's get to some of our concluding matter, which is our offers and kind of how you can keep in touch with us and continue this conversation. As you can see, Kristi and I both really enjoy talking about Evernote Business and some of the workflow things here, and it's how we've structured our worlds. Let me go ahead and share the URLs with you. We have active discussions around Evernote and its evolving processes and our evolving recommendations for best practices and user questions on our Facebook group, as well as Google+. And we have these videos recorded and posted on YouTube, so you can always see back issues or episodes of our trainings. Twitter, we have our own handle, as well as the GetUntethered hashtag. So, and certainly you can visit us on the web as well, and that's where you can purchase the book if you'd like. We are running a, you can see on YouTube, you can get all those back episodes, as I was mentioning. They're available anytime you'd like. We're running a spring sale with the code spring sale. You can get a print copy of the book for $14.99. That includes free shipping. Usually it's $19.99 plus shipping. So great opportunity to get the print version of the book in your hands. There's also additional digital versions for $14.99 available at GetUntethered.com if you'd like.
It's the perfect spring cleaning companion.
It is the perfect spring cleaning companion, so commit to it. And we go through several of our workflows, 15 to be exact, and how you can use Evernote to best be involved in your world and organize your workspace and your life. So we highly recommend it, but we may be biased. And then also, if you are interested in some Evernote business help, if you want my attention on your exact work case, I'm doing a special offer. You can go to harmonenterprises.com/Evernote Business. For $99, I will work with you for 50 minutes via screen share to, talk through your notebook naming conventions. What's the best practices for organizing your workflow with Evernote? I can be that outside resource to kind of help you get some of these things organized by working with me, no matter where in the country you are. So please feel free to reach out if you think that would be beneficial to you.
And I just want to put in a plug here. I've had several people reach out to me, and I appreciate it, and I would love to work with you. I'm on 2 major client deployments right now and don't have the capacity. So when I refer you to Stacey, I do with the utmost trust and confidence in her abilities. And she and I talk all the time. So if there's something that I'm more familiar with than she is, we share knowledge greatly. So if you need help with Evernote Business, hire Stacey.
Thank you. I would love to help you. And then the final thing is our next month hangout. Get ready, get settings, go. We are going to be reviewing the settings, the preferences, and the companion app settings that really make Evernote sing for you. This will be really helpful in your user setup, particularly for those of you that are Evernote Business users, and really make Evernote fun. So the topic may not sound that exciting, but it's what makes Evernote really fun. And so we are going to take some time and show you what you really need to do to make Evernote just work.
I'm so excited about this. It is the little things that make the big difference. I'm so excited.
It's those details. So please join us next month. With that, here's our information if you need to reach out to one of us individually. And we thank you as always for joining us. Kristi, any final thoughts?
Nope. Just get out there and use your Evernote.
Get out there and use your Evernote and upgrade to Evernote Business. It's awesome, and we'd love to help you, and let us know what your questions are. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you next month. Bye-bye.